All right, so we're live everywhere. We'll start admitting people and give a moment for people to join here. All right, ready?
Yes, I'm ready. I'm so excited people are tuning in. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you
Welcome
for
everybody.
having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Welcome everybody to a Free Thinkers Corner, the next in our series of A Frightmare Before Christmas. Tonight we have Catherine Cat Scully. She's a writer and illustrator of the LGBTQA YA horror series, Jennifer Strange. Kat's best known for her world maps, which have been featured in numerous books on the inside of the covers. Um, she works as a user interface designer, which we're going to get into because I have no idea what that is. And that's for Deep End Games on their next title, Romance Slovenia.
Romancylvania, yes.
That's very intriguing. She's also represented by an agency for film and television, which we'll get into that as well. And she loves Earl Grey tea, video games, The Evil Dead, which I was told to mention, Hellboy, watercolors, horror books, comic books, and anything involving outdoor sports. Now, would you prefer Catherine or Cat?
I prefer Cat. Usually only my family or like my childhood friends call me Catherine, but pretty much everybody has called me Cat since the 7th grade. So when someone says Catherine, I get very confused. Some of my close friends mockingly call me Catherine just because it confuses me so bad.
All right, so we'll call you Cat. Before we get started, though, just everybody who is here attending in the audience there, please keep your mics muted and your video off. That just keeps it from being confusing and stuff. And use the chat box if you have any questions or comments. Same thing on the Facebook Live. Anybody joining us there, just use the comment section there, and I'll relay everything to Cat. Cat, welcome to a Free Thinkers Corner of Frightmare Before Christmas.
I'm so excited to be here and to get to know you. I'm new to the area. I'm originally from the South, so I'm really enjoying getting to know all the local bookstores and coming to events. So thank you for having me, Chris.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So, like I said, you're the author and illustrator of the Jennifer Strange series. Why don't you go ahead and start with that?
So the Jennifer Strange series is a book that's been 10 years in the making. I've been working on it since I was an undergrad student back in 2009. This was my senior thesis. I was in a TV pilot writing class, and my teacher wanted me to write something. And this is what I came up with. This was the concept. I wanted to write about a girl who had like extra abilities, about a skeptic and a believer at its heart. And Jennifer Strange ended up evolving into a story about a 15-year-old girl who has the ability to give ghosts and demons a body with a touch of her hand. And if she's touching someone who's possessed, she can actually rip the entity out of them. So when this power wakes up while she's in the middle of volleyball practice and her father finds out, his response is to whisk her down to Savannah, Georgia, where her sister's going to college, and dump her on her doorstep and say, "I'm sorry, girls. I know you and your older sister Liz haven't spoken in years, but I really need you to just get along for a few days while I go and figure out what to do about Jennifer's power. Here's my journal. That will explain everything." And then he leaves. And Jennifer and Liz are in this now, we have to figure out how to bond again, how to be sisters again, because ever since their mom died, they just haven't talked. They didn't know how to connect anymore. And pretty much every ghost and demon in Savannah ends up coming after Jennifer, wanting her power. And they all swarm her to a point that she has to decide if she's going to harness her power and with the help of her sister, or if she's going to end up tearing all the city apart. So I wanted to read from a chapter I haven't done in an event before. And I haven't done this at an event because it's bloody. So I'm just going to warn you that this is one of the parts I was talking about before, where her power can actually like rip out of somebody's body. So if you're at all squeamish, definitely it's not that bad, but just be forewarned. So chapter 3. The lights went out all at once, as if someone had snuffed a candle out on the universe. I squinted into the dark, but nothing came in from the windows. Impossible. Why was the sunlight gone? There were half a dozen windows in the biology classroom, but no light poured in from outside. Something hit my face, thin and paper-cut sharp. I ran my hand across my cheek and my fingers bumped against something smooth. I took a sharp breath in and pulled until I held a bloody piece of something iridescent in my hand. Glass. It was a shard of broken glass. I stumbled back until I collided with a desk. My chest heaved up and down so fast my rib cage ached. I took a deep breath, forcing my heart to slow. Keep it together. Remember what Dad told you. Focus on actions. Complete the next logical step. What do I need to do next? I need to see. I need light. I pulled my cell phone out of my pocket and fumbled for the flashlight. I swiped it awake and turned the light away from me. The tiny bright beacon glinted off 100 pieces of broken glass, swirling over the wet linoleum, flurrying around the room like a cloud of bats. Someone took my arm and pulled me to them so violently I skid across a puddle. What the hell are you doing? Marcus said. Control your powers. You're going to get everyone here killed. I ripped my arm from his grip. I'm not doing this. Yes, you are. Something struck him in the back of the head. What the? It's glass. It was all I could manage to say before we were cut again. Sparrow, that horrible voice called. Can't you see me in the dark, Sparrow? I thought you birds could do anything. My cell phone shook in my hands as I whipped around to Brent, or rather, the bloody mouth person that used to be Brent. The bright camera light flickered when it found Bloody Mouth. It glistened off the dark trails on his neck and t-shirt. You know what I want, he said, spitting droplets of filthy water and blood on me. Release me from this flesh prison. I don't know what you're talking about, I screamed. He flowed across the room, toes dragging little currents through the water, and grabbed a student by the base of his neck. Release me, Sparrow, he said as the poor student squirmed. Give me a body of my own. I can't, I said. Bloody Mouth's face cooled. He studied me with wet, pleading eyes, and then brought his victim's face crashing down into the black hardtop of my desk. Bloody Mouth smashed and smashed and smashed until the student's face turned to putty. My cell phone turned hot in my hands so fast I dropped it into the water. It sizzled as it sank into a puddle. Great, there goes my light. Jennifer, come on, Marcus pleaded, snapping my attention back to Bloody Mouth. Just kill it already. I'm trying. My hands itched and pulsed with a pressure so powerful they shook like a fire hydrant about to burst. Don't use your gift. Dad said, not for any reason, no matter how much it hurts. Hold back or you will kill everyone. Marcus wanted me to kill whatever was inside Bloody Mouth, just like my body did. I clenched my fists, suppressing the urge as much as I could. No one was going to die because of me. Bloody Mouth turned to Ashley. She clutched a frightened Becky as hard as she could, tears streaming as she glared at his lolling tongue and blackened mouth. He grabbed Ashley by the throat, and he squeezed. She clawed at him, trying to breathe, her face contorted with pain. Blue lightning erupted from my palms and hit Bloody Mouth in the back. He released her and whirled around, sweeping the electricity away to strike the fluorescent lights along the ceiling. The bulbs whizzed until they burst in a shower of sparks. Dad never said anything about my powers and the freaking light show. If I get out of this alive, we are going to have a long, horrible chat. Jennifer, Marcus said, aim for his head. Stop telling me what to do. I whipped around to send another round of lightning at Bloody Mouth, and he dove behind Castleberry's desk. Seriously, Sparrow, Marcus yelled. How did you miss him? He was right there. Stop bullying me, I yelled. Fine, Marcus said, pulling something out of his pocket. I will deal with it. I'll show you dealing with it. My hands flushed with heat as I thrust both palms at the desk. Bloody Mouth laughed as he faded away from me, vanishing into a dark corner of the room. Smoke rolled all around him, filling the room until I couldn't see. I ran into the gray. Where are you? I yelled and sucked in a mouthful of dust. I coughed hard as a sharp object punched me square in the waist. It was hard and smooth, with something squishy that crumbled in my hands when I touched it. Soggy papers, folders. This is Castleberry's desk. Sparrow. The hair at the back of my head rustled. I'm right here. He yanked my hair into a ball and pulled. I screeched as Bloody Mouth tossed me across the floor, and my ribs slammed against a desk. I lay still, struggling to breathe, and as dirty water pooled between my teeth every time I opened my mouth. Dad's voice cut through the ringing in my ears, calm and steady. If one of them attacks you, use your mother's necklace. Use the sigils. Do anything to keep the entity from touching you. I grabbed the rose quartz and held it out toward him like a shield, but the blue current leapt from my hands and snapped at the chain. Bloody Mouth laughed as the crystal slipped right off my neck and fell into the water with a plop. I rolled over and felt my way around as carefully as I could, but it was no use. My one protection was lost among the glass shards of gray water. No, not lost. The journal. Where is the journal? The classroom door swung open with a bang. What in the Sam Hill is going on in here? A woman bellowed. The teacher from the front office, the one who looked at me like I was a bug, stood in the doorway, Miss Something or other. Hallway lights spilled inside, illuminating everything I both did and did not want to see. Students lay everywhere, broken and bleeding. The desks lay discarded, overturned on their sides and splintered. All of the glass shelves inside the cabinets were gone, littering the floor in diamond pieces. Everyone out, right now, the administrator yelled, but her voice broke apart as the smoke cleared and revealed the wreckage of the classroom, the students, and our teacher. Come on, Ashley said, searching the faces of everyone and no one. Despite the pieces of glass jutting out of her shoulder, she lifted Becky over, but her body was also a porcupine of shards. A girl and a boy stumbled out, but the glass in their arms and legs made it difficult to walk as they limped out the door. Castleberry lay, unmoving, curled up around his head, passed out from blood loss or dead, I couldn't tell. No one else got up. They were all who survived. I dug my fingernails into my arms until my skin hurt. It's my fault. All of it. My fault. And that's just an excerpt from chapter 3. So yeah, that part was really fun to write. It was very exciting.
And so you said you've never read that out loud at a meet and greet or anything?
No, I haven't read that part specifically. I've read other parts
Okay.
later in the book.
Because I was going to say that was fantastic, and I got to say there are so many good young adults novels out these days, and that's right up there with it. And so I'm really excited to get the book and read it myself. So you mentioned so what was it that got you interested in writing horror, paranormal, um, uh, supernatural type? Oh, actually, this is the question I did want to ask.
Yes.
You said that it was at the beginning. You mentioned that it started off as a pilot for a class that you were taking as your
Yes.
thesis as a pilot. Did this ever make it to film or TV?
It might. It might. We'll see. That's honestly on my film agent to figure out. So I do know that I had to write, when Jennifer Strange came out, more stuff for my film agent. And I'm being vague, but I had to, once I got my film agent, write out everything that happens in the series, because if you have a TV show, you kind of need to know what's going to happen. And the plot of Jennifer Strange, book 1 takes place over 3 days. I promise book 2 is going to be actually longer. Like, it's going to take place over a longer stretch of time. But the first book, 3 days. That's all it is. It is bam, bam, bam. And my film agent looked at that and went, that's like 3 episodes. So the second my book came out, I was in the middle of writing up exactly what happens in books 2 and 3, every character, every monster, everything, for her to do what she does best and look at the film side of things. So yeah, I think there's a good shot. I have no idea. That's all is out of my control. But being that I got into this wanting to do screenwriting first, And then I went to book writing second. This is very exciting. I'm very, I felt like ready to do that challenge of, okay, can you just write this whole story Bible? I was like, okay. And I just did it in 3 weeks. Not without help. I had some friends help critique it, but I did it studying a lot of other show Bibles, and I've studied a lot of scripts. And so I knew how to tell it like bullet points really fast, exactly what happens, no nonsense, nothing really long and wordy. Um, but it was nice to exercise those muscles again and do that. And I'm just so excited that happened. And I got a film agent like I've always wanted. That was the coolest thing, one of the coolest things that happened in 2020.
And did you go out looking for that, or did they come to you?
I actually got like paired up with a film agent from my literary agent, which I've heard is it's different for everybody. So with a film agent, there's people I've heard they've had to query a film agent, and I've heard that um, the film studio comes and goes, "Hey, do you have the rights? Like, do you want to sell the film rights to your book?" And then you get a film agent after that, or you go looking for one. It just depends on your agency. My agency had connections with a film agency, so they were like, "Oh, immediately here you go. Here's who you'll be working with," and assigned me. And I love Debbie. I absolutely love Debbie. So I felt like I really lucked out that they just already had this. But not every agency is like that. I think that's an important question. Say if you're a clearing author and you're like, "Hey, who handles your film rights?" That's definitely something you should ask, so that you know what happens if you're suddenly approached, say on Twitter, by somebody who does films. What do you do? What would the process be? I think it's always okay, even if you already have an agent now, to ask that question, like, what do I do if that happens? Um, but yeah, that's how it happened for me.
Would you rather see it as um, a TV, like on a Hulu, like commercial free type thing series, or a more major motion picture series? Because you said the first book takes place over 3 days, so that could really make just a couple hour movie out of that. Um, the second one you said is going to be longer to make it more into a TV series plot sort of thing. Which would you rather see more?
Well, knowing what's coming up for the series, and in book one, it really is about Jennifer and Liz rebonding. Like, it's about family, and the antagonists are all ghosts. They're all the ghosts of Savannah who want to use her power to cross over and either become human again, or they're demons who want a body of their own. And Jennifer can give them their own body. They don't have to possess anybody, they don't have to do anything like that. But in book two, the world is going to blow out bigger, way bigger than just this focused, okay, this is Savannah. We're dealing with really only 5 characters in it and a host of ghosts. But in book two, there's so many more people. It was actually so large of a cast. I had some critique partners tell me maybe you should whittle it down because there were so many more people involved. But I wanted the threat in book two to turn into, not only is she having to fight supernatural entities, but people, real living people, and how they feel about her gift. And some of them are her family members. So like her extended family who she's never met. So I think that with the concept of what it's going to turn into with books 2 and 3, I would rather a TV series, just because it's so massive, and also because it, like, structurally, I think it would make sense for the pacing of TV shows and what you want to accomplish in each episode.
Mm.
Um, and I think you could probably fit maybe books 1 and 2 into one movie. Like, if you were going to do a movie of Jennifer Strange, I would think it would be books 1 and 2. And I know how book 2 ends, so I think you could possibly squeeze in book 3, but I think it'd be better to do a show. Just to deal with all of the character reveals and how these people know each other generationally, because the hardest part about writing Jennifer Strange was the side characters, that I couldn't say anything about them. And I can't until book 2, and you get everybody's backstory. So it's this huge sprawling family saga. And I have other books I've written that I'm working on getting published now that are standalones. They're just like, this would be a movie. Like, it's one story standalone. It's not a generational saga. So that makes more sense to me as a film. But I think, like, if you got the right team and they were like, I have a really good vision, you could turn Jennifer Strange into one movie, maybe two. I could totally see that. It just depends on how they would want to handle it, the budget, like, because there's a fair amount of magic in it, and like, not strictly magic, but it does lean into horror fantasy a little bit. So you definitely would have to have a budget for Jennifer's lightning and some other things that she can do. So I think it just depends. I honestly would feel lucky for any of it. Like, wow, you'd want to make something of mine that's visual? Yes, awesome. That'd be so cool.
Well, it's funny how just even maybe a decade and a half ago, TV movies were not, I don't want to say low budget, but limited budget. So special effects were a lot different than what you would see in a big budget movie. But today, you've got big budget TV shows and um, that can do sounds like can do the type of special effects that would be needed. So would you consider Jennifer then a necromancer? Or
Basically,
how would you
yes, so she's got the ability to summon, and Liz has an ability as well. If you haven't read it, that might be somewhat of a spoiler, but her family has gifts in pairs generationally of banishment and summoning. And so I would say it's honestly a lot like a lot of real life ghost encounters I went and studied. Like, most of the cases of ghosts I've read about or done research on either involved a possession they were trying to banish or a spirit they were trying to summon. And I just started to think about, what if you had somebody that could just do all of that without a Ouija board? Like, or if you had somebody who could give a ghost the gift of life again, like, you could just give them a body and their original body would be in a grave. They just get a fresh, new, brand, like, nothing wrong with it body. And that's what Jennifer can do. But demons need a host to cross over. So if it's possessing somebody like Brent in the scene that I read, and she touches Brent, what was about to happen is she like can rip the demon out of Brent, out of the host, and the body will form. Um, and that was really difficult to write and to like show what I was talking about. I think that was the other hardest thing about doing this book. So it led me to make it illustrated. I ended up illustrating the whole thing so you could see the ghosts and what I'm talking about. Because when a demon's born, it doesn't look like a person; it looks like a monster, basically.
if you want to see any of Kat's illustrations, go to her website. They're just creepily amazing. They
Thank
really
you
are.
so much.
So is this an illustrated book or is it a more of a graphic novel?
Well, we originally called it a graphic novel, and a lot of people were hoping that the whole thing was a comic book. And so we stopped calling it that. We just called it an illustrated novel so that people didn't expect fully illustrated. For book 2, I want to put more comics in. I ran out of time to do as many as I wanted. So it's fewer than I was hoping. But I think in book 2, I'm definitely going to have more time because we're going to wait till after the pandemic and things calm down with printing and distributing to put it out to print. But yeah, there's every book, I can guarantee this, every book is going to have a journal component because part of the book is you are reading the journal with Jennifer. You're seeing the sketches with Jennifer. But every book in the 3-part series is going to be a different person's journal and their sketches and their monsters of what they saw and further explanation, kind of like there are a lot of questions raised in book 1 that book 2 is going to answer, because you're going to get a different character's journal and go, oh, this all made sense. All these like Easter eggs now make sense. So I'm very excited. I had planned that the whole time, but it was hard to release the first book and people were like, what's happening here? Like, why is this an odd end? And I'm like, because I have surprises for you. So, but I couldn't tell you in book 1 or the book would have been massive. It would have been huge.
Wow. Have you ever thought of, or would you consider going back to the first one and turning it into a graphic novel? Because it sounds like between your illustrations and just the storyline, it would make a great, genuine graphic novel comic book.
I think it totally would. Like, I think that I would love to go back at some point and just make it a graphic novel. But just doing the comics for this, even though there wasn't very many, it was so many hours. And I felt like it was kind of a choice between, do I want to work the day job I love and also publish books? Then I have to illustrate less. And I love working in video games and I want to keep doing it for a long time. So am I going to be a book writer, a comic book writer, or a comic book illustrator? And what I landed on is I'd like to write more comics and maybe have someone else do the art for them. So if I were to turn this into a comic series, I'd hire somebody or team up with somebody to do the art side of it. That's like, I really want to illustrate comics and that's what I want to do. Um, that's probably how I would handle it. I would probably do the journal entries because I have a very specific style for the entries of the monsters. That I would illustrate, but the rest of it I would just leave up to a very talented person who understands comic layout at a level that like they could turn out pages.
Black and white or color?
I think it would do really well in black and white and then bursts of color for Jennifer's powers and Liz's powers. I think that would be amazing because it's so moody and gothic. I'd honestly like something that was like not Frank Miller, but why can't I think Bernie Wrightson. I would love it to look like Bernie Wrightson gothic sort of looking book. Like it just super moody. I think if it was full color, it might be like too bubblegummy. The book is kind of bubblegummy, but it would be way too much. I think it'd be too pop or like too sweet looking. And then the amount of blood would startle you, probably.
Maybe that's the part that should be in color so that there pops.
That's what I was thinking, that the whole book would be black and white, and then you have pops of the red in the right places. That would be perfect. Like I've got a lot of people surprised, like, wow, this book has some gore. And I've had others like say, wow, I wanted more gore. So that's going to be interesting in book 2 because it will get worse.
So how hard was it, or how difficult, or what did it take to go from writing it as a pilot episode for TV versus going to a full novel?
It was so hard. I had no idea how to write a novel. It took me years and years to figure that out. I am absolutely more of a visual writer. I know how to write like something quick and something. Even my writing in this is very quick. It's very punchy. It's just like this. It's not super flowery. So I've been actually training myself to be a more flowery writer this year. Ever since the book came out, I've been studying third person flowery writing because I've always wanted to do that. Just where it's more descriptive, where it flows. This to me still sounds like it's almost screenwriting because it's very pithy. So I feel like I'm still learning. I've been doing it, like revising this book for 10 years at this point. And at first I went in tackling it blind. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to write a book and figure it out. And the reason I started writing the book at all is my son was born and I was terrified of giving birth. I was so scared of like everyone saying it was going to be painful or whatever. And it wasn't bad at all. And for me, that doesn't mean it isn't bad for other women, but for me, it wasn't bad. And so I got out of that thinking, why didn't I just query my book? Like, why haven't I just written my book? I've been so scared. Why am I not doing this? And so I spent my maternity leave. In 3 months, I wrote the whole book. And then by the time my son was 6 months old, I had an agent. And I felt like I was just doing it all instinctively by the seat of my pants, just writing what I saw in my head. I'm such a visual writer. I just see it as storyboards in sequence and just writing it that way. But the past 2 years, my entire process has changed from what it used to be. I felt like before I was just scrambling to figure out what a book is, and now I'm starting to know what a book really is, and how to structure it and how to do character development, layer characters, do the right reveals, do the right twists at the right times. So it's going to be interesting, the difference between book 1 and 2. So I've been doing so much studying for 6 months.
Now, the description of the book, or in your bio, it says you're the writer of an LGBTQ young adult novel. Obviously, it is young adult. Are the characters, some of the characters, part of the LGBT community, or?
Yes, Jennifer is bisexual. So there's definitely going to be a bit of a love triangle in this series between her and Marcus and Ashley. So you got a little bit of Ashley in the room. Ashley is the smartest girl at school, at her new school in Savannah, Georgia. And Marcus is a very surly, son of a ghost hunter family. And it will definitely be a bit of a tie, like a pull of what Jennifer wants to do about her budding relationships with both of them. In the first book, Marcus is really hard to relate to because he's coming from a place of anger, like anger at his family, anger at Jennifer for destroying his whole school. But then as he helps her with her powers, he starts to understand where she's coming from, how this was all dumped on her, and his whole perspective of her is going to change. And I think Jennifer is going to decide if she really wants a relationship or not with either of them, if that's something that she wants in her life. So I don't think it's going to be a sweeping romance, but I do think that romance is going to be a part of it, and it's going to grow throughout the series. In the beginning, in the first book, she has an immediate attraction to Ashley the second she walks on the school campus in chapter 1. So it's not really a spoiler that she's into Ashley, and they definitely start to bud a relationship. But the question will become in book 2, are they really going to be able to work it out together? Are they really going to be able to work around Jennifer's destructive powers and form some sort of normalcy, which I'm very eager to explore. I think that's going to be great. I'm honestly very excited about the Jennifer Ashley pairing and where that's going, because I love Ashley.
Now, of course, not naming names or anything. Are these characters based on real life people, or are they just completely made up?
Yes, they are completely based off of my sister and I. I just flipped us. My sister is younger than me. I'm the oldest, but I'm a lot more like Jennifer, and Liz is so much like my sister Katie. There's also a lot of my brother thrown in, although I'm basing him more on the character I'm writing in my next book. But my sister started reading Jennifer Strange, and she told me on a call, like, I knew that was me because the first thing she does in the book is burn the breakfast. And I was like, yep. It was so us, like the banter and everything. And when we were young, we lost my grandmother. And we were very close to my grandmother, my mom's mom, and she lived near us. And it was hard for my brother and sister and I to go through. So I was definitely writing from that kind of experience in my life where my mom was having to take care of my grandmother in the hospital. And I spent a summer just babysitting my brother and sister. And so I really related to Liz suddenly having to care for her younger sister, not really being ready for it. I was in high school when that happened. My brother and sister were like 7 and 8. So I related both to Jennifer, wishing her dad explained more. And then also Liz, I'm just trying to go to college and suddenly I have to take care of my little sister unexpectedly and go to class and pass my art classes. So I tried to write it from both points of view, even though the book is solely Jennifer's POV, first person, obviously. But it's definitely about my family, like about both sides of my family, my mom's and my dad's side, and about hereditary curses. So that's going to be really fun. I've been so worried about them reading it like, this is kind of based on you guys. I love you.
Have you ever heard of Laurel K. Hamilton's Anita Blake series?
I have heard of it. Yes, I haven't read it.
Okay, well, that was my next question. I've read the majority of them. They got a little too away from the original premise of the necromancer. She brings zombies or people back from the dead to for court cases and will disputes, and then she puts them back in the ground. But her second thing is she's a vampire slayer, because vampires and weird animals and everything are legal. There's laws protecting them now. They're out in the open and everything. Anyways, but when you're talking about the relationship between your characters, especially in the first book, that's what it reminded me of, because she has to get in uh, together with the city's master vampire and the city's master werewolf. They get together, but theirs is more to protect or to they get shot up and beaten up and stuff, and they're just about ready to die, but they have to get together to rejuvenate themselves to beat the demon that's. So anyways, but it kind of sounds like That's why I was just wondering if you ever. It's really good book, really good series though. The murder mystery thing and then the whole paranormal thing on the other side is works really well. And for the first 6 or 7 books, there's a lot of books.
Oh yeah, that sounds exactly up that alley. I think this is a great this book series is a great gateway for if you have a middle grade student or a young adult who hasn't tried horror before. This would be a great series to pick up, especially if they would like a show like Buffy or say Anita Blake, or they like anything that starts to lean into urban fantasy or um horror but is a little bit fantastical. I like the things I like stories that ride the line between horror and fantasy. Like anything that's right there in the middle, kind of dipping in both, that's what I love. So I think this would be great for them for sure.
Yeah, it kind of sounds well, Buffy is. I was trying to think of that one too, but yeah, Buffy Charmed.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
And
my
like
wife's a.
Supernatural, everyone said, "Oh, this is just like Supernatural, but with like girls instead." And I'm like, "Well, it's going to go a completely different direction than the show." But yes, Supernatural fans, if you're lamenting that the show has ended, please come check out my book series because this is so up your alley.
Well, as soon as we get it, my wife will be first in line to buy the book because she loves all three of those shows. She DVRs them and watches them every
Oh,
morning,
perfect.
Charmed
That
and
would be so
Supernatural
great.
and everything. So you
I,
mentioned that, you did a lot of research, ghost stories and such. Now these are real ghost stories. Are you a ghost hunter? Have you ever been on one of those ghost hunting adventures? Or
I've been on a ghost tour. I've been on a couple ghost tours, but all of them I was more of a skeptic. I was definitely more of a Scully than a Mulder. I was like, but where's the science? Like, and I've told this story to some of my friends, but I went with my friend Jen to a haunted tour in Roswell, Georgia, which is where Jennifer's from in the book. That was on purpose because I was like nodding to this event in my life where I first saw a ghost. And we were in a graveyard at Founders Cemetery where the founder of Roswell was buried. And I walked over to a tree and my friend Jen went to take pictures. She was all about trying to find an orb, like a ghost orb or something, get it on camera. She was off looking. I was like, I'm gonna look at this tree and these headstones, la la, night walk. I like history. That was why I was on the walk. And I felt someone come up behind me. So I turn and I say, thinking, because the whole rest of the group's far away, that was Jen. It's like, hey, Jen. And this girl floats right by me, a foot away from me. And she's completely iridescent. She has like a blonde bob haircut and really pale eyes. And she just looks at me and just disappears around the tree. And I heard the tour guide say, oh, you see where that girl's standing with the dark hair? She's standing right where this ghost pops out sometimes for people and she walks around the tree and she'll come out for people and like kind of look at them. And I said, oh my gosh, I just saw her. So it wasn't in my head that I would see her or, oh, I'm looking for her. Um, I've never had anything like where I've actively gone out and looked for ghosts because the encounters that I've had usually tend to find me. I think the only time I ever tried to summon one was when I was in college and my friends were all like, let's get a Ouija board. We were all drunk. And we went to an abandoned classroom, like at the end of the hall that was meant for studying. We got the Ouija board out. We start using it, and the room gets really cold, like really freaking cold. And it's August. So I was like, why is it freezing? You put your hand out, and it was like really, really cold. And we all like, that's it, we're done. We closed out the board. But I just felt like somebody was following me. I had this feeling like all the way downstairs, and I kept seeing this girl. And then I didn't know why I kept seeing her, like in my mind's eye. I didn't physically see her like the graveyard, but I kept seeing her. I just felt like she was standing outside my bedroom, just like staring at me because she knew I could see her and she could see me. And I looked it up. I just told her to go away, just like ignored her and said, I'm not paying attention to you. I can't see you, not paying attention to you. Just go away. And I looked it up and there was a girl of her description that had hung herself on the 7th floor. So they tend to find me and I'm usually like, nope, I don't want, nope, no, thank you. So I've decided like I tend to be too sensitive. So I think if I went to a haunted house, they would all bother me.
do
Or
you watch?
something.
Do you ever watch them on TV, like Ghost Hunters or the Paranormal Caught on Video or any of
Oh,
those
for
shows?
sure. Yes. My favorite thing, like I know a lot of people who watch true crime. My favorite thing is like I'm wearing it right now, Mothman and
Mm.
like cryptids and watching ghost hunter shows, and that's my jam. I'm not about serial killers. I'm about Mothman and ghosts and aliens. That's my yes, I'm gonna binge watch and have a good night shows.
So when you get tired, I don't want to say tired, but when you feel like you're ready to either just do a side project other than Jennifer Strange, or you think you're done, you move on. Would you ever try anything aliens, kind of sci-fi like that?
Yes, I've been itching for the longest time to do a science fiction project because I love science fiction so much. I really, really do. I love The Luminous Dead. Uh, that book was amazing. I really want to do more like that. That's sort of like queer science fiction. I love well, I'm trying to think of her name, Charlie Jane Anders. I love what she does. I'm very excited about her young adult science fiction book that's coming out. But I love to read them. I've edited some. I really want to do, and I just need the right premise. What I'm working on right now is it's honestly kind of a fairy tale. It's like a Guillermo del Toro-esque fairy tale that's about an urban legend. After I saw It Follows, I was so affected by how much I love that movie. I was like, why can't I write my own urban legend? And I'm going to write it about a public park, about a god in the public park. I'm going to do it. And so that's what I'm working on right now. And it's a 3 POV book set in the South, and it's a lot more epic and sweeping and beautiful. But I was like, after this, I want to do something science fiction related, especially sci-fi horror. I love that. Like Alien. Oh my God. I want to do my own like Ripley sort of character. That'd be amazing.
Nice, nice. So your illustrations, of course, are more monster, paranormal type things. Have you ever thought of doing any alien illustrations? Do you have illustrations for aliens?
I've drawn Alien from Alien a bunch of times. That's honestly the main thing. I've been wanting to do a series of monsters. And now I'm thinking just from this conversation, I should incorporate aliens into that, like different alien beasts. I do a lot of drawing for the video game where I work, at the Deep End Games. So lately, honestly, I've ever since the book came out, I've been working on Romancylvania, and now I'm working on a different project with them and Romancylvania. And I haven't started to work on my own illustration stuff yet, but I was like, I need to get on this and do more monsters because I just love drawing them. But I need to do more science fiction ones. I think the only time I've been asked to do one is when I did a cover for Mike Casto and I did a bug alien that everyone in this preacher tent was like praying to. They didn't realize he was a bug alien. I love doing that book cover. That was cool. More alien covers, please. That would be amazing.
So what is this Romancylvania? Are you allowed to talk about that?
Yes, because we announced it. I'm so excited. I've been doing interviews all this fall where I was like, I can't talk about the project. Can't talk about the project. And we finally kickstarted it. We had a successful Kickstarter. I can't believe it. We were looking like after a couple weeks, we launched in October, mid-October, and then with the election, all the news, we couldn't get traction on people, like people's eyes on it because there was so much else going on that was really important. And we're like, well, what can we do? It's a pandemic, one of the most important elections ever. It is what it is. And then just in the last like 12 hours, I think we raised $70,000, got the whole thing funded. It was like unheard of. Kickstarter was writing us like, how did you do it? It was amazing. Like it's definitely a joint effort of all of us on the team, spreading the word, getting it out there. But we wanted to do a dating game meets Metroidvania. And if you don't know what I mean by Metroidvania, I didn't know what that meant at first either, but it's basically a platformer. If you don't know a platformer, that's Mario. It's like jumping up on platforms. That's Metroid. So Metroidvania, that's where the term comes from. And we wanted a platformer where you're Dracula trying to find true love. So it's a comedy. So it's like you're doing kind of a bachelor, like bachelor, pun totally intended. It's punny. It's really fun. The more you level up your relationships, the better the gameplay gets. You can play it if you just want to fight, just fight. If you want to date, you can date the monsters. It's whatever you want to do. So we wanted it to be an inclusive game, it's just going to be a really, really fun time. And so much of that is due to like not only the artistic talents of the entire team involved, but Amanda Gardner, who wrote it. She's one of the most whip smart writers I've ever seen. She's incredible and so punny. Like she can come up with a pun like this, like all day. She's amazing to watch work. So I've loved working on this game with her and everybody else. Um, it's been so cool, but it is a genre bending game. It's sometimes hard to describe because dating meets fighting. Not not typical, you know, like you've got dating sims and you've got fighting, but putting them together, I think it's going to be really great. Like,
All I can think of is Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the movie with
yeah,
Angelina Jolie and
yeah.
Brad Pitt, where they're married, but they end up at the end of this shooting each other and or shooting at each other and stuff.
Oh yeah. And I love this because I've always like wanted dating monster games where you can date the werewolf or the siren or the genie. Like that's going to be really cool. And then you get different items, different quests, level up your weapons. That's going to be cool.
So is this kind of like a oh, is it out yet? Is it still kind of in beta form or
So we got it funded, which means we can now make the game. We have the funding to
gotcha?
make the game. We're kind of in the middle of
Hmm.
developing exactly how much we're going to be able to play with and what we're going to do in the new year. Like after the holidays, we're going to start moving into production and then it will be launched. It's the projected date is in March 2022, I believe, maybe earlier, but I know that's when all of the goals are going to be released to everybody, like the art books and all of the hoodies. I believe there's still, if you haven't backed from Pennsylvania yet and you want to get in on it now so you can get a Switch copy, Xbox or PlayStation, I believe that the backer thing's still open. So if you're a late backer, you can totally come on and add some stuff. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but I can provide a link and say, hey, it's here if you want to check it out.
Yeah. Are you doing like you mentioned an illustrated book for are you part of that or is that somebody else's department?
Oh, there is an illustrated book for Romancylvania. And my art, I believe, will be in it because my logo's on the cover of the book. Like I did the logo for the game.
Hmm.
So part of what I did for the game, I remember you mentioned you didn't know what a UI designer was. What I've worked on is the HUD, like the health bar, magic bar, all the icons. I helped build the whole Kickstarter page. So I did all the design work and with Nat K. Concrete, who did help me with like color correction and we worked on it together. And then Lindsay Gardner, our producer, built it out. So I help, basically I'm a graphic designer for the team and I'm an illustrator for the team. So if there's something graphic design related, typography, icons, color choice, I help with all of that. And I was so excited because I got to do the weapons. So all the weapons on the Kickstarter page, the sword, the whip, I did all of those. So if you see any art that's got kind of a heavy black line, it's kind of a grittier style, that's definitely me.
So you are any of the backdrop, the like when they're walking through the woods or over the fields or whatever, is that taken from you're also an illustrator for I had mentioned at the top different world maps for different um, fantasy trilogies and things like that. Is any of that in the game too?
Yes, I did the world map for Romancylvania. That's one of the backer things you can get is a print of the map, I think on cloth. And I was very excited because I was like, all of my map skills have come to this moment. And I whipped up that map, I think in like 2 hours. Like my boss, Bill Gardner, was like, can you just do this map? And I just did it and it was done. It was so fast because of how many maps I've drawn in the publishing industry. So I definitely think a lot of what I did for publishing before contributed to what I do in games now. I did a lot of intricate work, a lot of pen work and ink work. Um, I first started working as a map illustrator, I think in was it 2016? Yes, I think it was 2016 with Claire Legrand's Winterspell map with Simon and Schuster. And I'd never done a map before, ever. And I got hired because I was drawing on Twitter and Stefan Bachman, the middle grade author of The Peculiar, saw it and hired me to do his bookmarks to advertise his new book. And I was like, yay, that's so cool. I've never had anybody hire me before. Um, just in publishing, never in that field. And then Claire Legrand saw it and saw, oh my gosh, I want you to do the same thing. So I did character cards for her. And she said, just on the off chance, can you do maps? And I did. I just did one for her. I learned so much because I didn't know. I made the newbie mistake to put the border on the same layer as the map, so it didn't resize well to the interior of the book. I learned a lot, but that's still the one everyone comes back and says, I know you for the Winterspell map. I know that you did that, and I love that. It's one of my favorite maps ever. And then from there, it became a snowball. Suddenly I was doing one for Scholastic, for HarperCollins, for Random House, for everybody. I was doing them for everybody. And sometimes it would go in the book, and sometimes it would go to market the book. And I did just a steady stream of maps until around 2018, when my health went more south. Then it all kind of like, I took on maybe one or two a year after that. But yeah, that definitely helped with video games, because I could just done, map done.
Now, did you go to school for illustration, or was this just something that you can naturally do, and you just, like you said, we're just doing it one day and put it up on Twitter, and it went from there?
Yeah, I have an English degree in professional writing and multimedia. So my focus was screenwriting and pretty much any multimedia, Photoshop, InDesign, anything where writing intersected with graphic design. I wanted to do that. Anything where writing intersected with visual media. And then when I was in my junior year, I applied to an internship at Cartoon Network and I got it. And I went and worked in writing, producing, and for a while I just filed invoices until I spoke up and said, hey, I want to do more. I want to learn animation. I want to learn writing. And I learned a lot about After Effects and how to write commercials and how to do spots and interstitials. And I loved that job. Like that, I realized that's what I want to do, is I want to write for visual media. So the book thing came way later, when I discovered who Neil Gaiman was. I didn't know who he was until Stardust came out. I had no idea. I discovered him so late in life. I will always regret that, but I didn't know who he was at all. And I saw Stardust and went, oh, I didn't know you could have like a career as a author. I just like read books. I loved them. And I never really thought of myself as an author until I saw Neil Gaiman do it and like go and present to people. And I thought, oh, I would love to tell stories and connect with readers. I would love that. That sounds amazing. I want to tell stories, but I want to illustrate them too. And I've always been an artist first, and then I became kind of a writer second. I fell into creative writing my freshman year of college because I got randomly placed in a creative writing class. And they said, write whatever you want. And I said, what? I don't have to do 5-paragraph essay? What? And so I wrote a story about two detectives fighting an ancient god in a meat warehouse. And that's pretty much the basis for the rest of my career. Like I write a cult detective in my mind. Like that's honestly the same pattern every time. Somebody is solving a supernatural case.
So you develop games, or help develop games. Are you a gamer yourself? Do you like playing like World of Warcraft or any of those other fantasy role-playing type games?
Yes, I love playing games. I honestly did it as a way to de-stress for years and years. When I went to high school, I went to a school just like Jennifer's, where I had to wear a uniform. It was a math science charter school. And we didn't have a football team. We had LAN parties. That was our sport. So I got very good at Halo, because that was like the social thing to do, was play games and have like massive multiplayer. I didn't get into WoW, but I got into all the shooting games and I got pretty good at them. And then I think when I got my first job, I was an animator for a little production house in Atlanta. I bought my first big PlayStation 4, and I bought BioShock with that. And I fell in love with it. I was terrified the first time I played it. I honestly spent the whole time hiding from the Big Daddy. I was so scared. And then I played it again and did a lot better the second time. But then it's really funny because I play it every Christmas, right? I play Bioshock, Bioshock 2, Bioshock Infinite, and Burial at Sea. Every Christmas, I beat all of them. And then I ended up working with them. That's who I work with now. When Irrational split, one of the companies that formed after was the Deep End Games. So I work with some of the old team. And I never ever thought during all that time that like my love of this game would turn into a job qualification. So I love playing games. I love anything that's, I call it the Prince of Persia format. I love anything that's fancy fighting and solving ridiculous puzzles. Anything like that, that's my jam. I want a good narrative. I want to shoot something and I want to solve a puzzle.
Yeah, my son, he's 23, but from years prior to that up until now, even he plays every night. He's on Red Dead is his game of choice
Oh,
with some of his
yes.
friends and all that kind of stuff. And we told him, your career should have been going into gaming. He loves going over to GameStop, and he knows them personally now, and the manager over there, and get a job there. Maybe you can get yourself testing, some of these games that come out or something like that. So do you use, when you're writing and you get stuck, do you use games as a de-stressor or something to maybe help kickstart where you're stuck at?
Yes, you found me out. That's exactly what I do. Like if I'm stuck, I'm like, I'm just gonna go play a game for a while. And sometimes it's low key, like Animal Crossing, or sometimes it's like I gotta go play Man Eater where I am a shark and I am out for blood and I'm gonna go get the guy that wronged my mama's shark, and I'm gonna go hunt the mob. I love Man Eater so much. I'm telling everyone about it. I'm like, this is the most ridiculous game I've ever played. I love it so much. And it helped me get through November. I love this game. Everyone buy it. It's ridiculous. My husband calls it Grand Theft Sharko. It's the best game. It is Grand Theft Auto, but you are a shark.
That's interesting.
It is interesting. So sometimes I'm like, I gotta go play the really hardcore game, and other times I'm like, I just wanna go fishing for a little while. My brain will shut off of whatever I'm worried about, and then I will come back to the draft and go, oh, that was the answer. The other way I get unstuck is honestly the one I use more frequently. I draw it out. If I don't know what the scene's going to be, I will draw the characters, I'll draw a picture, or I will lay it out like film shots. Like, this is what I think the shot would be. This is what I see sequentially happening. And I'll thumbnail it or I'll do detail of it. But I like to draw and storyboard my process. So I feel like I'm honestly at heart still a screenwriter who's learned to be a book author, but I have to draw it. I have to see what I'm doing. Lately, I've gotten, from studying more craft books, I've gotten better about like, I'm just going to write out the beats. And I don't get as stuck as much as I used to, because I think one of the big lessons I learned from putting out a book this year is part of your responsibility is to always be refilling your well, not just with books to read, like that you love, or like going outside your genre, like looking at how other people do it, but reading craft books. Those have really helped me. It's changed my whole process.
Um, do you ever listen to music when you're writing?
100%. I can't write in silence.
Do you ever get stuck and go and play that guitar that's behind you?
No, because that's my husband. Along with all the Gundams. Look at these beautiful, my husband made all of these. I'm so proud of him. They're just so beautiful. My husband owns, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guitars.
Oh, wow.
The drum set's mine. The drum set's over here behind the couch. We had to move it because we had
Nice.
the Christmas tree out. But yeah, I'm a drummer. I am not good at guitar.
Do you ever get together and just jam to get unstuck sometimes, or just
We've wanted to, but being that we have 2 kids who are doing remote school, oh my gosh, it's just not an environment for us to do that right now, because we're doing remote learning with a kindergartner and a 3rd grader, and my kindergartner can't read yet. So she needs help with everything. So my poor kindergartner is trying her best, and we're helping her through it. But I think most days I get up, I do I have a routine every morning where I read a book, and then I read the craft book, and then I go write. And then I usually save art for the afternoon. Some days I have to write all day, or some days I have to read or edit a book all day. But that's honestly, if I have that routine in the morning, I was talking to Amanda earlier. She talked about the 5 a.m. wake up club. I'm not a 5 a.m. person, but I do believe in this routine she showed me to do, that you get up and you do the same thing in the morning, kind of start your day right, and you get in a good
Mhm.
mood and you do a little something for yourself. Some people like that to be a workout or free writing, 5 pages. I like where I get up and I read. I read every morning with coffee. Like, I have to do it. If I don't read something, I just feel off the rest of the day. So that's how I've stayed unstuck for longer, is making sure I commit every day to reading. I don't write every day. I can't always write every day, but I read every day.
I like to read at night. It's good to relax from the end of the day. Just go upstairs, 10 o'clock. So it's kind of a routine for me. 10 o'clock, go upstairs, light on. Usually it's a book that somebody's brought to me to review, to have in the store or something, and just kind of read for a little while until I start getting tired. So yeah, I completely understand the routine. So you had to do you took a creative writing class, and you had this wrote the story about detectives fighting monsters. Is that the first time? What was it that brought you to write about that? Is it like movies from the past, books you've read in the past? What is it about the monsters and the supernatural that got you on that whole genre all the way up to Jennifer Strange?
100% Hellboy. It was 100% Hellboy. So, growing up, my mom is not the biggest horror fan. So there was this one weekend I was with my boyfriend, and we decided to rent the new movies that had just come out, and they were Hellboy and Dog Soldiers. And I watched both of those, and I was like, my life is changed. I have seen what I want to do. I love this. Oh my gosh. Like, I love the anti-hero who's fighting the supernatural demons, but he's misunderstood by people. I just love that. I'm still this enormous Hellboy fan. Um, the other reason is because when I was in high school, I was in engineering. I was very, very good at engineering. And one day we were all talking with my teacher because we had finished early. And he said, "You guys don't know who Ash is from Evil Dead?" And we were all like, "No." He said, "Okay, we are watching Army of Darkness next class period." And so at my school, we watched Army of Darkness for my engineering class. And I was like, I've never seen anything like this. I love this so much. I didn't know horror could be like this. It could be funny. It could be like Bugs Bunny. Like, what? I had no idea. And so it made me like, I want to do something like that. And so I think for me, my love of Jennifer Strange is intrinsically tied to my love of Evil Dead. Like, this is my, okay, I wanted to write something. Like, when somebody puts something out in the universe and I love it and I really love it, I want to write something back. I want to say something back. So I was like, if I were to have Sam read anything, I want him to read this series, because I was like, it meant so much to me that when they remade Evil Dead 20, I think it was 2013, they had a female lead. I loved it. I was like, oh my gosh, I'd love to have women in this universe fighting demons. That'd be amazing. That aren't like the typical final girl. This is like, she's covered in blood everywhere by the end of it. And she's like got a chainsaw and she's going at it. I'm like, I want girls like that. They're really fighters, like super fighters, like I saw in Buffy. And then I've watched Ash versus Evil Dead and I saw Kelly and I was like, oh my God, Kelly. Kelly's like holding her own. She goes from not knowing how to do anything to like being the baddest one on the team. I was like, yes, I want girls' stories like this. So I wrote Jennifer Strange to be sort of like that, but it dips more into fantasy a little bit, more into the things I'm interested in, that I like: family ties, found family, what is family, what is a hereditary curse, what do you do with the things passed down to you that your parents leave behind, how do you handle that, like, what do you do to cope with it, and how do you move forward with your family's relationships. So I really love that was honestly the formative experience, was this trifecta of Dog Soldiers, Evil Dead, and Hellboy that made me this now. They're like, those are my interests now.
And then you have all the other strong female characters, like you mentioned, Alien. So Sigourney Weaver's character and Jamie Lee Curtis's character, and Halloween. So those
Yes,
resonate with you?
those absolutely resonate with me. I only just recently saw Halloween because Bracken McLeod threatened me to, like, he was going to throw me out of his house if I didn't see Halloween. I'd seen all the other John Carpenters but Halloween. He's like, you're not sleeping in my house. You don't watch this movie. So I saw it like 2 years ago for the first time, which is nuts. I don't know how that missed me. But I've seen Alien dozens of times. I put it on to go to sleep. I love Alien. I'm one of those weirdos that puts on horror movies to fall asleep. I'm like, oh yes, they're going on the dropship down to the planet and aliens. Okay, I gotta sleep now.
So we got a comment from I'm not sure if it's Sherry or Matt, but Sherry Matt Bechtel.
Oh,
I never knew
yay.
you were a drummer. I used to play way long ago. What type of set do you move for your tree? I grew up on a 7-piece Ludwig.
That's amazing. So I have like the most basic drummer kit, like that standard that you get students in high school. That's like the 5-piece set, because I'm still just learning. I actually was taking lessons up until I was 6 months pregnant with my daughter. And now what I have in my apartment is an electric set, like it's a 5-piece electric set. And I basically was learning how to play any kind of rock music, or I learned Metallica because my husband loves Metallica. And right now I'm trying to learn Ghost. I've learned all of Faith by Ghost, and I want to play it and record it at some point because I think that'd be really fun. But my daughter still falls asleep to anything that's like hard metal. You put it on in the car, she's like out. She loves metal music. I'm like, I'm convinced it's because I took drumming lessons while I was pregnant with her.
Maybe. What's her favorite band?
It's Ghost. She knows
Is
all
it?
the song. She knows all the words to Rats. She does the
Nice.
entire dance that Papa does. It's so funny. She's the one who got me into Ghost because she loved it so much. It's so fun. She's 5 and she loves Ghost.
So last night we had Steve Van Sampson on, and he just popped up with a comment on Facebook Live. He says, "Look at all those glorious Gundams," and
I
we were just talking
know. I know,
about
Steve,
those.
look, like Michael does such a good job. Like, serious shout out to my husband that he does these amazing models. He also he's a Mandalorian and he builds his own Mandalorian armor. He 3D prints all of it. We were hoping for him to open up a shop actually before the pandemic hit, where he just sells cosplay stuff like for Mandalorians and a bunch of other stuff he's interested in. But I just love him. He told me I can take those down. I'm like, no, you're not moving your Gundams. You're leaving them there. They're glorious and they took forever for you to build. So I'm super proud of Michael.
So along with the writing classes you took in college, when you started writing outside of that, did you ever do like uh, um, NaNoWriMo or any of those type of um, I don't know what they're called. They're self-writing platforms to kind of hone your craft, or do you belong to any um, not cons but organizations or writing groups? Writing groups is what I'm looking for.
Yes. So I definitely have critique partners. I'm part of a critique group that I meet with digitally. But because of the pandemic, we don't meet as often. So I have other critique partners I work with that some of them are agented, some of them are not. They're at various stages in their careers, but they're all good at something different. And I love getting different perspectives. So I have my friend Jade, who's a freelance editor, and she's really great at seeing some big picture stuff while also looking at consistency. I have another critique partner who's a really great copy editor. I have another one who's really good at big picture, calling out all my holes and calling me out when I mess things up, and very blunt. And I love that. I'd rather work with somebody who just tells me what's wrong. Um, I've really been fortunate to have some good friends that will look at my work and offer me feedback. I think part of it's because I'm an extrovert, and part of it is because my friends are just so nice and they're willing to like help me fix up my book. But I work with them. The software I usually work with is Scrivener. I tend to write everything out. I do a complete outline of a book before I start it. I do every chapter, all the beats. I do a basic outline, and I don't feel beholden to it though. I feel like that if you do an outline, it's okay to go, don't hold it so tight. You can let it go. You can see if something comes up more naturally as you're writing that makes more sense. I can't start with a blank page, although I've done it and I've free written it and then it kind of goes nowhere and doesn't make sense. And those are usually my short stories where I'm like, I just got to write a short story for this thing and I just go and see where it takes me. And I go back and edit it later, but I feel like it's so much more manageable to like free write that and then fix it. And I feel like it's okay if I don't have beats for that because I can fix less than 50 pages very easily. But if it's bigger, most of my ideas are very big and high concept. So I have to have an outline. I have to take all these big ideas I have and put them down and make them on paper so I can look at it all. I'm like, okay, I get distracted by the shiny sometimes, like, oh, that's great. Oh, I could add that in, or I could add that in. And in video games, we call that feature creep. Like, oh, that'd be a good idea to add in this part of the game. Oh, that'd be good to add in this part. And you really don't want to keep adding all that stuff in. You just want to keep the core of the story. So writing it all down helps me keep the core of the story I am trying to tell. With Jennifer Strange, I had to think about the core of the story over 3 books. So I knew writing that first book, it wasn't going to make sense because I'm looking at it globally. I know what the whole thing is going to be, but I know what has to happen in book 1 for the rest to happen. So when I talked to my editor, John, about it, I was like, this is what's happening. I really think it should be 3 books. And he said, well, what we can do is honestly, it's all one book that we've broken up into 3 parts. So when all 3 come out, we're going to do a compilation of them all together as an omnibus because in plot, it's one thing. It's like one book. It's a moment that's leading to another. It's leading to another that we had to break up because I was like, this would be a 500-page YA novel. And I think it'd be better to do installments. So yeah, I think that's part of my process for that, but it's honestly so different than how I usually work. Usually it's just, I get an outline, I go into Scrivener, I write chapter by chapter. After I've already done all the moving around on my scrap paper, I don't do as much moving around in Scrivener. I spit it out into Word, and then I have Word read it out loud to me. That's a new thing I've adopted, is having it read it out loud. Because then I hear it and hear the cadence and hear, is it working? Am I repeating myself? Does it sound like it flows? I have to read it out loud now. I was very opposed to that before. I got too nervous, like, oh, what if my writing sucks when I read it out loud? I didn't want to do it. But now I have to every time. I like being sure that it's going to sound good when I have to do an event like this and like read out loud. I want to know before I'm on camera or on a panel.
So you're the second person that's mentioned Scrivener. Now we've done almost 24 of these now, and you're the second one that's mentioned Scrivener. That's a writing platform where you write and you have notes in different sections. How does that work again?
I feel like it's honestly not unlike Word meets Pinterest. Like if I were to pitch it, like what it is at its core functional wise, it'd be like, would you like to be able to, looking at your book, and you can have a global view. You can look at just chapters. You can move chapters around. It'd be so much easier if there was a software that did that. In Word, it's all linear. It is start to finish. It's very difficult to copy and paste. Word is not really great at, I can take this whole chapter that's in the wrong spot and move it to another one. So if you're somebody who's like, I like to write this chapter here and that one here and that one here, Scrivener is great because you can shuffle them around almost like Post-it notes or index cards. You can move them around. It has a corkboard feature where you can look at your book as a series of Post-it notes or note cards, and it has the chapter number or whatever you want to put on those note cards, and then shuffle them around however you want, or put a summary. So you can really look step back in a way you just can't with Word. Because when you step back with Word, it's one big document. You can't tell what's going on. You just kind of have to remember what's going on. Scrivener does the heavy lifting of helping you remember what's going on.
So Paul McNamee just put up a link on our chat here, but so for everybody who's listening on Facebook, obviously can't see that, but it's www.literatureandlatte.com/Scrivener/overview. So I guess that's one way to look at it. So Jason LeBlanc is asking, how do you rank the Evil Dead franchise? That's including the remake and the Stars series.
Oh my gosh, I love you, Jason. I love him for asking this question. I know he probably might disagree with my answer, but my favorite one is the first one. I know everybody's favorite is, oh, thank you, Jason. Everybody's favorite is Evil Dead 2. But my favorite, I love the first one because it reminds me so much of when I was in college and I was a little filmmaker with a bunch of other filmmakers, and we all decided to form a club called Indie West. And there were actors from the acting department, screenwriters from the screenwriting department, and film majors. And we decided we're going to make movies. We're just going to go in the woods. We're going to go set this up and shoot films ourselves. And so Evil Dead gives me that kind of nostalgia that I remember laying on the ground, getting the right shot, because I was the director of photography for some of the films we made. And I was just laying there trying to get the angle, and the whole process of how just a bunch of friends went into the woods and made Evil Dead makes me go, oh my gosh, I could do that too. I could make a movie too. I would love that. And then I think from there, I really love Army of Darkness. Just, I love the whole thing because it's so screwball. And I love the TV show. After a TV show and the remake are tied for me. I love them both equally for different reasons, but I think they would come next. I don't know which would follow which. And then Evil Dead 2 is last for me. I know that's so opposite of everybody else. Like everybody else is like Evil Dead 2 first, but I'm like, that's just the order of which I came to them and love them. And it's not that I love Evil Dead 2 the least. It's that I love these the most. Like my affection is in this order of what I love and why.
So you mentioned, so you said you use an outline, and you also do a storyboard. Have you ever blended the two? So you wrote a storyboard and then wrote underneath it part of your outline, and then went to Scrivener and started putting the pieces together according to that storyboard and outline.
When I'm very early in a draft, I'll either use just a spiral bound notebook to just jot down all of my thoughts, or I'll get a whiteboard. Because a whiteboard, you can erase so easily, you can see everything globally. I will write it all out. I did that for Jennifer Strange. I literally went, okay, here's Jennifer, Marcus, Miriam, Ashley. Where are they? And what's happening with them? And then drew a map of where they were going to be in the city at what time. So I knew where everybody was and what their motivations were and what they were doing and why that would lead into book 2 and 3. So I drew a map, like a Frodo going like to
Well, that was
to
my
Mordor
question. That
map.
was going to be my question. Is it an actual, you drew out the land and all the trees and things like that with little
Oh
footprints
yeah.
going?
Oh yeah. Like I did the map for Jennifer Strange in the very front of the book, and I actually went into Google Maps and did a map street by street of where Jennifer and Liz run from where to where to where. So all of it's real. All of the locations are real except Northwinds.
So when you got all that together and you're ready to sit down now and put it into Word or whatever and start actually typing out all the paragraphs and stuff, what kind of music do you like writing to?
So it changes for each book. For Jennifer's, I listened to Ghost. I listened to Ghost so many times that when Spotify did the 2020 wrap, they're like, your favorite band of the year was Ghost. So I'm like, that's because I listened to it revising Jennifer Strange over and over. I was just listening to Ghost. And then with Mercy Park, I have a playlist that I've built, and it's part Taylor Swift, it's part Neon Demon soundtrack, It's part the Village soundtrack. I listen to whatever inspires me. I am all over the place with music. I just devour it. I love to listen to everything. I just I don't care if it's country or if it's rap or if it's I just want new music. And so I will just soak all of it in all the time. If somebody says, I have a new band you need to check, I'll be like, yes, and I'll just listen to it. So I listen to everything from Ghost to Lizzo to Taylor Swift to Miley Cyrus. I listen to everybody. Like I don't have what I had as a teen, like ew, or I snub my nose at anything at all. Like I love Ariana Grande so much. I love her. And that's completely different than the death metal I love to listen to also. So for every book, I have a different playlist because every different one has a completely separate mood. It needs a different vibe. I can only write to music I've heard a bunch of times. I can't do new music listening and write. That's the one stipulation. If I'm checking out a new album, I gotta draw to it or play a video game to it. I can't write and think and hear my voice at the same time. And there's some days where I just can't listen to lyrics. I'm like, I gotta hear my own voice. So I'll put on my favorite soundtrack's The Village by James Newton Howard. I'll listen to that on repeat for Jennifer Strange if I'm like stuck and I need to hear their voices. So yeah, it just depends on the mood, the day, and if I've heard anything good lately. Lately, I've been listening to Taylor Swift's 2 new albums while I write. So I never know. I get obsessed about one album and I'll listen to it 50 times.
Well, the next time that you're on playing your video game and you're into looking for something new to shoot out to, a great album, great band, Enchanted Exile.
Oh, cool.
It's
That's
because
Steve's, right?
That's Steve's band, yes.
Yes,
So
yes.
quick shout out to Steve. Enchanted Exile. You know, it's Camelot meets Judas Priest. That's the way I
nice.
describe them. And yeah, really good band. Check them out the next time that you're looking for something new to write to eventually. Have any of the lyrics ever worked their way? So you're sitting there writing, you're listening to what Taylor Swift or Ghost, whoever, and all of a sudden you realize that you're typing out their lyrics.
Yeah, I definitely did that with Ghost and Jennifer Strange. Like I even put in there that's Marcus's favorite band. I actually have a specific song for book 1 for each of them. So Jennifer Strange, Jennifer's Halsey, and she wears a Halsey shirt at one point, and then Marcus wears a Ghost shirt at one point. So I'm like, this is exactly their vibe. Like I want each of my books to have an album, and like this is what I think it would be. But I've definitely had times where I've wanted to put lyrics into my books and I've gone, oh, I can't get the rights to that. I can't do that. I'm just gonna put their bands as t-shirts in my book. That's how I'm getting around that.
So when it comes time for Jennifer to be on TV, who would you like to play her character? What actress would you like to play her character? Or and the other characters. Did you have anybody in mind when you were writing these characters of, okay, I'd like this to be a TV series. I'm thinking this character, I just lost her, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I just lost her name, but anyways.
Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Thank you.
Yes, I lost it too for a second. I was like, wait, I just saw her Instagram the other day. So I was like, oh yes, there's her name. But no, I didn't go in with this book series having anybody specific in mind, especially because when I originally wrote it was 10 years ago. And I was thinking entirely different people at that time. And now all the people I was thinking are 10 years older and they wouldn't work for the roles. So I was going, I would love to give somebody new a chance. That's what I'd love. I would like to give somebody new who hasn't done anything before, because a lot of new actors get their start in horror. I'm like, get somebody in there that wants to prove their chops in horror and then come and like get big. Like I'd like to give somebody a platform with something I made that has never been seen before and just has a bunch of talent. Like that's what I would want. I would want to uplift somebody else versus an ideal casting.
Wouldn't you worry though that because they're so new and they just haven't as a cast really bonded yet. I mean, maybe they will. Maybe during the readings they will bond right away and everything will go great. But there that hesitation, that fear that, well, for example, what comes to mind is the very first Star Trek Next Generation um, episode. Um, to me, they were very rigid, very, you just couldn't see the connection with them. But then as the years went on, the series went on, you could see them more comfortable with each other and their more interactions, and they became more likable for me, likable characters. Do you worry about that?
I don't think I'd worry about that. If I were to have an ideal casting, it would probably be among the adults. Like, that would be a name draw. I think it would be great to have somebody play Miriam that is really killer. Like, because she is so important. You don't see how important when you read the first book, but she is so, so important for the whole series. I'd want somebody that had a name that was like really good and was like a veteran um actress to pull her off, because she will be, I think she's probably the hardest um because of her motivations and like why is she, she's Marcus's um it's sort of shown that she's his grandmother, but she's actually not. That's a spoiler. I can't exactly say who she really is to Marcus. um the other people I would really want there to be A-listing for haven't been introduced yet. Because they are, I want to answer the question in book 2, where does Jennifer's power come from? Like, where does this all come from? Why is this happening to her? Yes, like her mother passed down this curse to her, and her aunt had the same gift as Liz, but why? And the answer, I would love a listing for those answers. There are 3 of them, 3 women. I would
So
love that.
is that family history? And if you can't answer this because it'd be a spoiler, but how far back will that history go? Will it go back to, say, the 1600s with the first settlers here, or would it go back even further to, say, the Dark Ages over in Europe, or even further back before 0 AD?
It goes all the way back to like 0 AD. I decided if I'm going to go with this idea that there's someone who can pull on life and death, then I'm talking about a cosmic scale thing. And I've got to explain that. I've got to give a reason to it. So I decided I'm going to give a reason about why these humans are cursed with an almost godlike ability. And if that happened, who were the gods? So for those of you tuning in who have read the book, I kept writing in books that I signed, what's behind the black gate. That was a cryptic message. A lot of people are like, oh, I read the book and now I know what's behind the black gate at the end of book 1. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You don't know. But I'm going to tell you in book 2 and book 3, and it's awful.
So
On
so
a
for that,
cosmic level, if you want a hint, What Dreams May Come is the closest. I really was affected by what Richard Matheson did and What Dreams May Come, and about how we make our own hells. So I wanted to do something like that, where there were characters who made their own hells or made their own heavens, or what did it look like when they died? Like, what does that mean? Like, what is a ghost? What is a demon? And I have an answer for that is in the Jennifer Strange world. That's a fantastical answer. So it's going to be leaning more into fantasy than any religion. It's a fantasy answer.
so are you drawing on other cultures, ancient um, uh, stories, histories, or and if so, how much myths and legends is what I was getting at. And how much research, if that's the case, how much research are you doing to find what you're looking for?
So I read a lot of pagan books, Wicca books, witchcraft books about banishing and summoning spirits, which was really interesting. I went into a deep dive and I was like, what if I came up with my own answer? And what kind of structure would that require? So I went and decided, okay, what is the Black Gate? Why do they have this power? what happens when you die? And I just went down the flows of logic to come up with that answer. So I wanted to create a magic system that based off of what I've seen people experience and like both in magic, metaphysical, and then also in real ghost encounters, so scientific, and then come up with something that felt natural to me from the conglomeration of both, which is part of what I loved about what Richard Matheson did when he studied What Dreams May Come. He went down a whole rabbit hole, and it's all noted in the back of the book of what people were studying, near-death experiences, ghost encounters, all kinds of stuff. And I decided to just read it all, just read whatever I could find, and then come up with an answer that made sense within the narrative. Like I decided I didn't want to borrow from any structure, mostly because I didn't want to borrow from a culture that wasn't mine, and I didn't want to appropriate. That was the first reason. The second reason is because I wanted something that made sense narratively, that would provide the greatest emotional meaning when it's revealed to Jennifer as a character. So it all ended up being in service to the character and where she's going to go, where she's going to grow, what she's going to realize about herself. And I realized if I went and decide I'm going to pick this specific sect of like pagan ancient study, it's not going to serve what Jennifer wants. And because I'm doing something that kind of leans into fantasy, I have the free reign to just kind of do what I want to and just make it fantastical, make it with some like have some overarching deities that I make up. But I think that there was a book in particular that helped me a lot, and it was like the study of Bloodthorn, which is all about like studying trees actually, and like different spirits and trees, like more fairy realm. And I realized this is kind of a fairy realm, but for the dead. Those two ideas do go together, like going on to fairy, like the Song of the Sea when they go on to fairy, or in Ireland and Scotland, so kind of more Celtic ideas. And I'm like, that is where what I'd say would resonate the most, is in more Celtic mythology about what happens when you die.
So Steve Van Samson would like to know, is there cake behind the black gate?
Is there cake?
Yes.
No. It's a desolate wasteland full of sand.
So more sandwiches.
More sandwiches. Lots
There
of
you go.
sandwiches.
Think cakes. Sandwiches, think cake.
But the problem is in book one, it's not there anymore. The cake is a lie. The cake is a lie.
The cake is a lie. So we're just about out of time, but I did want to ask, have you ever thought about an audiobook for Jennifer
I would
Strange?
love to do an audiobook. I've been bugging my agent about it, and I'm like, I'll read it. I'll read it. I would not mind that at all, to read it out loud and everything. But my agent is shopping around the audio rights. I need to check in with her about how it's going, and if it's not going anywhere, I might just put it out myself.
One thing that, here's my shameless plug for the evening. We partner with an audiobook company called Libro.fm, and
I know them, yeah.
Yep, they support local bookstores by remitting portions of sales that go through that bookstore's particular link to them. And one thing that they had posted a while ago, and one thing that I'd like to pass on to everybody is, with that other audiobook company that shall not be named, I'll name it
Yes.
Audible. Sometimes they have an exclusivity policy. One of our favorite authors that we have in the store, her audiobook, just that exclusivity just ran out. So now she's able to go to Libro. And so therefore we can go ahead and promote her once she's got it up there. But is like for the first 6 months or so, or 9 months that she's had it in audiobook format, there's nothing I can do about it. So as far as you or your agent goes, something to maybe keep in mind.
Oh, I would love that. I'm dead set on getting an audiobook. It's too important to me to get one.
Because hundred thousands of people now are switching from Audible to Libro. It's a wonderful platform, easy to use. It even works on the Kindle Fire, which is pretty awesome.
Yes.
So if you are, but yeah, that's just another thing to check out is Libro.fm. So my other question would be, who would you like to have one person narrate it, either you or somebody else of your choice, or who they give, or would you want to have multiple characters, multiple voices for the different characters?
I think multiple voices, because Marcus is such a strong voice, Liz is such a strong voice, and Jennifer is like, I think, but I've seen like Ruin and Rising had a really great narrator um that she did all the voices and did a great job. So it'd have to be somebody that either did voices or doing a cast of people. I think either one could work. I'm honestly flexible to either because I've seen so many do a really good job with voices and stuff.
If you were to do it, would you change your voice for each character, or would you just read it in one voice straight through?
I do voices for all of it. It make because I'm a mom, but like at the parts with the demon, I have a specific demon voice, which is more of like a cooing, like slow voice that's soft instead of violent. That's honestly what, if I were to work with somebody, that's what I would say to do for the demons. But if I were to do it, I would definitely have everybody have a different voice for sure, because they're coming from such opposite perspectives.
Would you want to be on the panel, or panel, I guess, or whatever they call it, for choosing both the visual and the audio characters, actors, actresses?
Yeah, I would love that. Like, I think if, say, we sold the audio, I'd love to hear or like be just a background part, or I'm like, oh, that sounds really great, or that. But I'm one of those people that does trust, if you're like an audio person, you know audio better than I do, but I'd love to just give my 2 cents here and there, like, oh, that sounds really great, or that, because I do know some about audio, especially as a musician and like what I like to hear or things like that. But I don't like to step on toes if I'm doing that. And the same goes for like a TV show or a film. I trust the people who are working on to know what they're doing and have a vision for it, but I'd love to be creatively consulted, or even like, I don't have no experience yet in doing this, but I'd love to be part of the group writing it, because I don't want to get precious about anything. Like, I completely understand stuff does not adapt to film. Like, it just doesn't, or it doesn't adapt to a TV show. And I like being flexible with other people's ideas, because I feel like with my books, the book will always exist, but the TV show has to be something else, because you have to think about timing of commercials. You have to think about so much other stuff. So much, you have to get across stuff in 20 pages. It's just not the same amount of room as a book. So I'd love to collaborate with whoever translated this to other media, because I don't know, I want to be open like that, and open to ways that the work could be interpreted, because then it grows and it becomes something new. And I like being there for that. That would be awesome.
Would you rather, so for TV, would you rather though have it on a network TV where you have to have the commercials and you got to build that into the script and the editing and everything, or would you rather have it so that it just flows in one episode, like on HBO or Hulu or one of those streaming?
I think it could work really well with commercial, just because I know how to write to that. That's how I was taught when I wrote TV pilot, was commercial timing, like how you leave a cliffhanger at a commercial. But people are really opting these days to get away from commercials as much as possible. I'm one of them. I paid for Hulu to not give me any commercials. And I used to write commercials for a living. Like, I used to do that. And I'm one of those people who's like, I don't want them. So I think my dream of dreams would be to have Shutter pick this up and go bloody with it. Like, I would love that. Shutter would be my like
Well, that's the other thing.
ideal.
That's the other thing too. Having a network TV and primetime cable, there's probably, that rating system that they have. There's certain things that you wouldn't be able to do versus if you had it on, well, like Shutter or even HBO or Hulu, where you can put a little bit
Yeah,
more of
yeah.
that blood, gore, profanity if you wanted, if that's your thing.
That's what I'd love. I'd honestly like to go a little more indie with Jennifer Strange, just because I love what Shudder's doing. I've also really enjoyed what Hulu's been doing. So, and Netflix as well. Netflix is knocking it out of the
Netflix,
park.
that's the other one. Yeah.
Yeah, like anything with them, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so lucky. Like, that's how I'd feel about it. I don't think I needed to get on primetime television because having worked in that industry, I know what that means. And it's a strict guideline set of rules. And I feel like I'm seeing Shudder and Netflix and Hulu do braver things with their horror because they can, because they have the ability. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'd love to get over there where somebody goes, I see the potential for Jennifer. What if we did this or what if we did that in that world? And did that visually would be incredible. I feel like the luckiest person ever.
Do you still have the pilot episode that you wrote in school that you could go back to and work on, or would you kind of have to start from scratch?
I have it, but it's like 10 years old. It's buried in my files. I've got it though. I've got a paper version and a print, like a digital one. And I think I'd have to go and change it to adapt to this, but the way I'd handle a pilot would be to tell it from Jennifer and Marcus's perspective. Because Marcus goes off and does some things with Miriam that you see more of in book 2, but because the book is limited to just Jennifer's perspective, I think a TV show could blow up the world of let's follow Marcus, let's follow Jennifer, because you need both their points of view. You could create an A-B plot from that. So that's what I mean by like, no, change the book, because the book is meant to be a book. It needs to change to fit the media, to have an A plot, a B plot, a subplot that's running a rail through the rest. So it would have to adapt.
So that was going to be my next question: is how rigid to the book would you need to be? Or would you prefer to be, versus what they would like it to fit? But if it does need to change, it needs to change to fit that particular medium. So we're pretty much at the end. One last question I'd like to ask is kind of a fun thing. What are you reading now? And what is your most guilty pleasure book that you've read? Like something out of the ordinary that you just, you know what, this looks like fun to read. Let's pick up this. It's something I normally wouldn't read.
That's honestly all the same answer. I've read only horror all year. I've been reading all the adult horror that's come out. Like I've read Paul Tremblay, I've read Grady Hendrix, I've also done Adam Cesari's brilliant Clown in the Cornfield. Highly recommend. Everyone buy that book. Everyone read that book. Love it. I love Year of the Witching. I'm in the middle of reading Ghostwood Song, but my guilty pleasure right now is I'm reading fantasy. Like complete fantasy. I'm trying Holly Black for the first time ever. And I'm also trying Shauna McGuire for the first time ever. I've never read either of them. Everyone raves about them. And I've been in horror land. I haven't read outside of that. I've read like fantasy horror, but not just fantasy, where we're just dealing with the Wicked King, like fairies and elves and romance. Romance tends to be my guilty pleasure. Like I love Outlander. I love True Blood. Oh, Kitty.
Hi. Yeah.
I love cats. So yeah, right now my guilty pleasure is Holly Black. I love it. I love her. She's so good.
There's some great women fantasy writers that I love. Anne McCaffrey is one of them. She writes a fantastic series on dragons. The
Yes.
Dragon Riders of Pern.
Yes.
For the first 3 books, and then you can expand from there. Those are fantastic. Barbara Hambly. I'm trying to pull up the books that she writes. It's been so long since I've read those, but there was a series by her that I really enjoyed. And then there was one more. Well, yeah, definitely Alana Mugden. She's an indie writer from New York. Fantastic writer, dragon books. And you're gonna jump over here. Come on, there we go. So yeah, but yeah, definitely Alana Mugden, Barbara Hambly, Anne McCaffrey. Those are fantastic fantasy if you like dragons.
I love anything dragons for sure.
There you go. Just wanted to finish with well, first of all, a huge thank you again for doing this. Jennifer Strange is her novel, and just a quick a review from Paul Tremblay that Jennifer Strange is a gruesomely fun demon-infested YA romp in which two teenage sisters learn and ply the family's secret demon fighting trade. A promising debut. So definitely, I am so looking forward to reading this, and hopefully we'll be able to have you in store for a signing, and hopefully we can have everybody in the store for a nice big author day or something.
That would be amazing. I'm so excited that the vaccine's being shipped out. I can't wait. I'm so excited.
Yep. So it is on its way to the store, so we will have it soon. But for now, you can get it through her website. You can also get it through bookshop.org and or your other local bookstore. Check out your local bookstore. If they don't have it, ask them to get it. You know what? It is available at the Copper Dog.
Yes, it
in
is.
Beverly, Mass.
I've signed some copies there. So yes, it's available. But I'm happy to come sign. I would love to come sign Freethinkers Corner.
Great.
I think that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I just happen to know about that because my daughter goes to a Montserrat College of Art right around the corner. So she's right across the street from the Copper Dog. So good friends of ours. So yep. So wherever you can, try to stay away from that platform that shall not be named. And it's all good.
Yes, please don't order from Amazon. They're still shipping out my blank books. I just want to add that. They're still, you can order paperback and be okay, but not hardback. Like, don't support a small bookstore. Please, please help them keep their doors open. But even if you don't buy my book, just buy books from Freethinkers Corner. Just please do. I would love everyone to just buy their holiday books from small bookstores.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you again. Thank you for everybody for joining us. For those who missed the beginning of it, it'll be available in a few minutes on our Facebook page, so you can watch the beginning of it. This was a great interview, one of our best that we've had so far. Thank you very much, and good luck with the book.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's been wonderful.
Have a good night.
You too.